Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. Today we're going to be presenting the third in a series of webinars on PPM Challenges and Opportunities. Today's PPM Challenge number 3 is about providing value to all levels of the organization with your PPM solution and process. And looking forward to presenting that to you today. My name is Jim Patterson with EPM Live. So in this third of the series, if you missed challenge number 1, we also included in that presentation performance reporting and how we can really communicate metrics and status and progress on our projects, and really how to manage our issues and our risks regarding our projects from a reporting perspective, how to deal with change management, just overall resource reporting on resource planning, capacity, and utilization. So these are the things that we've talked about, but these are all available if you want to look at them in more detail on our website. Okay, enough of the preliminaries. Today, in our current challenge, let's talk about providing value to all levels of the organization. Some of the challenges that we face with this is that enterprise tools and processes often cause resistance within organizations for a variety of reasons. Change is hard. Different folks adopt and receive change differently than others. But often in putting out these processes and solutions, it's because the purpose is not well communicated. The what's in it for me is really not communicated at the different levels of the organization. It's often defined without considering all the users at all the levels of the process or the solution. And oftentimes it's only defined with the executives in mind, meaning the visibility and the reporting and the information that they need. Consequently, users often don't feel that the tool has been put in place to help them in any way, only to feed information to others. So this is a problem, especially if you want success, if you want adoption, and you want to receive the benefits of the solution and the process that you're putting in place. Another challenge is that oftentimes these solutions are put in place and the information is either misused or not used at all for decision making. Frustrating the user base as far as why am I putting the information and the effort forth to support this system if it's not helping me, if the information is not being used or looked at, and decisions are being made irrespective of the information that's put in. So these are some of the challenges that are being faced in this whole providing value at different levels. So our opportunities in this area is to really take steps to ensure that all stakeholders' needs are met, meaning you have to take a more holistic approach, and also think about it in the ways of how are you going to get adoption and participation on a successful level with this process and this solution. What we want to do is we want to get users to feel ownership of the tool and the process so that they can perform their roles in there in a meaningful and enthusiastic way. So if we provide a system that meets all the users' needs, we have to do certain things. For example, we have to consider all users. We have to consider all the different work that's going to have to be managed and controlled and have visibility in the solution. And we have to accommodate different work processes. Not all types of work are done the same. Not all organizations or departments or subsets or business units within a company have identical processes. So unless we accommodate the variability and the different needs to meet different work needs, our approach to PPM may not be as successful as we want. So by looking at it more holistically like this, we have an opportunity to do this successfully based on lessons learned and failures other people have had by trying to do it in an otherwise different approach. So let's start talking about the enterprise versus the user needs. You know, the different roles that are going to participate in this PPM or project portfolio management process. We're looking at executive roles, PMO roles, project manager roles, functional manager roles, and the team member, the people that are actually doing the work on the projects and the work efforts. And so the value proposition is not the same for all levels of the organization. The kind of what's in it for me and what do I need, the answer to that question is not the same depending on the role that you're talking about. So to be successful and sustainable with a PPM process and solution, we must provide real benefits to all levels of the participants and the users. If it breaks down at any one of the levels, the information and the value that you're going to get from the process and or the solution is going to be not what it could be. and it could be a failure or just less than optimum in the results that you get from the solution. So we really have to be focused on the productivity and the business needs. So from an executive stakeholder, they're always an easy one to sell on PPM solutions. It's not hard to sell executives on better visibility and better information for decision making. They often are the recipients of this information. So the things about which projects are working out best, which ones align best, what are the best projects to select, these are questions that they can that they want answered. But a tougher sell sometimes is for that management group, project managers and resource managers, the middle management of the organization. Is this just a tool to feed information to the executive stakeholders, or is it really going to help me manage my resources and my functional departments better? Is it really going to help me manage my program and my project better? Is it going to give me tools to make me more effective, reduce cycle times, and increase my likelihood of success? And the team member side of things, what's in it for me? Oftentimes, they're left at a loss to figure out why is me providing information, participating in process, and just added rigor to a process, for example, for better control. Well, how is that going to help me in my day-to-day work and getting the work done that's expected of me? So what we want to do is we want to really focus on all these areas or all these stakeholders in the PPM process and see if we can communicate and deliver benefits that are meaningful. So let's look at the value proposition that maybe would be important to senior management, some of the ideas that are here. As I had mentioned, increased visibility into the status of proposed and active projects and the metrics around those are things that are very valuable to senior management. To get a finger on the pulse of where things are at, what's coming up, what new ideas and values are they going to be providing. These things are all important to senior management in the decision making and really steering the company in the direction that they want to go. Also, what's important is the ability to have the organization apply their resources to the highest value investments. Most organizations today get more demand and ideas and requests for projects and work than they could ever reasonably handle within any given time frame. So the idea is we must prioritize and we must find the things that will best add value to the business. And by applying our resources in a thoughtful way with the best return and the best benefit to the organization is something that senior management is going to want to do because it really drives what a successful organization can be. Also, they want to provide clear linkage from strategy. Top management really outlines the missions and the strategies and the vision and the business drivers of where the company wants to go. Consequently, when we're making work and project investment decisions, we want to make sure that the investments that we're making help us succeed in those stated strategies, because by meeting those stated strategies, de facto is going to determine the success or lack of success of the company. Senior management also wants their portfolio of work and project balance to reflect the priorities, the risk tolerance, and the resource capabilities and capacities of the organization, meaning there's not just any one dimension of a proposed project or piece of work that needs to be considered. It is a mix, and oftentimes a weighted mix of considerations that need to be taken into account when really deciding on which are the right things for us to be working on. And also senior management wants their projects delivered on time and on budget with the scope that's been asked for and with good quality. If we deliver a PPM solution that meets the prior criteria, a default benefit of that should be we should be improving in all those different areas on time and on budget and on scope and on quality. Also, investment governance and visibility enable senior management to respond to change and uncertainty in a fast-moving marketplace. The last thing you want to do is be caught flat-footed. So without real-time visibility and good metrics on how we're doing and the things that we're working on and responding to the marketplace, we are at a disadvantage with our competitors. So the idea here is that by putting a good PPM process in place with good investment governance, it's going to help us be a more responsive, more agile, and more nimble business, hence more successful. Also, with a good PPM process and solution in place, there's going to be a higher probability that's been shown that benefits will be realized. Meaning, with more proactive scrutiny of your current investments and the projects that you're currently working on, and seeing if they're tracking as we thought, if they're delivering the benefits or just delivering as we thought, we have the ability to avoid sunk costs in losing projects and efforts. So those sunk costs and investments that aren't delivering, we have the visibility and the ability to pull the plug, for example, or defer, while we still have a chance to maybe not throw good money after bad, or good resource after bad decisions. So these are some of the things that senior management is looking for from a PPM solution. Now when we get down to middle management and looking at, say, the project and portfolio manager roles, what's in it for them? Well, if we do this properly, we can save time and effort by consolidating all information in one place, meaning that in performing these roles and delivering these projects and managing the portfolio, it's easier to analyze and be able to analyze consistently the projects and potential projects that are coming down the pike. By not having to go to a variety of places over the information and manually compile information that we need to make good decisions and to keep our projects on track, it makes it easier and more streamlined for us to keep our finger on the pulse and do our role to deliver these projects successfully. Also, with a good PPM solution, project management and portfolio managers can have better coordination with the functional organizations that own the resources and matrix organizations by securing the right resources at the right times. A well-planned project isn't going to do well if the resources don't show up on Monday morning when you expect them to. Something's not going to get delivered. So through a better visibility, better coordination, delivering those resources at the right times with the right skill sets to your project is going to be much more consistently done successfully. Also, a good PPM process and solution will save time and effort to these project and portfolio managers in providing information and reporting to executives. So many organizations today are highly manual in this process. As I mentioned, they're going to multiple different sources, multiple solutions, multiple databases, and trying to compile that information into a form and format that's meaningful to the executives. This can take many person days per month per participant in this, which is effort that could be more productively applied if we can do that more effectively. Also, by putting a good PPM process and solution in place, we can really streamline and automate the overall work process itself through automated solutions and workflow so we can provide more efficient execution. So we're not chasing things down, we're not chasing people down, we're not chasing information down by knocking on doors and soliciting and really making that turnaround time on getting that process completed, meaning that we can get more done in less time. If we look at the value proposition at middle management from a functional department or a resource manager's perspective, one of the things a good PPM process and solution will do will provide the ability to have your resource usage optimized, meaning we will be able to apply in a timely fashion the right level of resourcing at the right level of time to support the projects. Because the challenge for the functional manager is really we're supporting a bunch of different projects of which we're not the project managers, and we have to make sure that we deliver resources successfully so that those projects can be supported successfully. Also, with a good PPM solution, we have enough visibility and good planning detail so that the amount of work in the pipeline and what's accepted into the mix will not excessively exceed capacity to deliver, meaning not being under the gun to do more than is humanly possible within a given time frame. Also, with that type of visibility, these functional resource managers can actually have tangible justification for staffing levels. So, for example, when they say they need more resource because of the demand that's been accepted, they can show in very tangible and very material ways the shortages and how capacity is being outstripped by demand. So it really helps them in maintaining and justifying staffing levels that are needed. Also, it provides better visibility and control of how the resources are supporting projects. So looking at it from a functional view and saying, here's my roster of resources that I'm responsible for, and what am I currently committed to, and how are we doing on those projects, they can look at that from a very good functional perspective and successfully support the project management organizations. Also, the functional managers are, if we manage these resources better, if we give them more reasonable workloads and we provide the right skill sets and the timeliness, the teams that they're managing will often have better morale and lower turnover because of the fact that we're doing more sane planning and more sane execution based upon the resources that we have. At the end of the day, if we do all of these things, we will increase on-time and on-budget delivery and the percentage of the things that we do better to support that and deliver from our functional organizations. Now, team members. Oftentimes in a PPM solution, they're the toughest sell. Part of the reason is because the team members benefit. What they can really get from this solution, much of it can be a deferred benefit that they don't get from day one. For example, one thing they do get from day one is that they get improved visibility to what's expected of them in the solution, meaning they can see what's been put on their plate, what is expected of them, what has been committed to them in the overall PPM and project management process. Also, a good solution will actually help establish priorities in relation to one another on pieces of work, so that when conflicts do occur, it's not left to the team member to decide and doesn't give them the possibility to incorrectly decide which pieces of work take priority over others when they collide. The deferred benefit is really the more manageable workloads. If we really have a good intake process, good demand management, and a good PPM governance, we should be taking on work that's doable within the level of resources that we have. Oftentimes, to get that to that level, especially if it's being done more ad hoc these days, to get that to where we're actually practicing the process well, and we actually start using the information well to make good informed decisions, ultimately those manageable workloads should make life better for those team members on these projects who may be currently stressed and have unreasonable workloads being put upon them. Also, as we said earlier on with the other roles, the automation of the process in the PPM process should provide less labor-intensive process compliance tasks for them. Spending less time on complying with the process and doing what the process is saying by automation is going to make sure that they can get in, get out, and get more heads down on development. So the last bullet, that would actually provide more time for the development and their participation of what they're supposed to deliver for these work items and for these projects. Not only through more streamlined process, but also through less non-productive meeting time. Oftentimes when these solutions are not in place, people actually gather people around the conference table for hours at a time just to figure out where they stand, just to get status on what's going on. I would submit to you that a good functioning PPM process and solution will help you communicate where you stand and what progress and status are, so that when you do have to meet, those meetings are more about what do we do about the problems we have, what do we do about where we are, and not spending excessive time trying to figure out where we are and how we impact one another. So at the end of the day, there'll be more efficient status and progress reporting from the team. And once again, that frees up time for them to do what they do best and what they'd rather do. They'd be developing and working in their areas of subject matter expertise. So just some ideas of why these things might be important and the value that different levels of the organization might be expecting or might demand from the solution. Another aspect of this is that a PPM process, to get the full value of a PPM process, you really have to accommodate all types of work and resource demand. That all must be considered. Because if some of your resource investment is factored into the equation, then some of the benefit and value of a PPM solution is lost. You know, when it really boils down to it, in most organizations, there's all kinds of work being generated and in a lot of different forms and fashions. Oftentimes in PPM, we start talking about just the project or the capital project work that's going on. But that doesn't factor in all the smaller projects, the more operational work. So maybe it's some of the product development and application development that's being done in a more agile fashion. Just service requests and things like that that happen on a daily basis that impact resource utilization or resource workload. Unless we factor in the impact of competing demands for our resources our PPM or portfolio management can be severely impacted by not really factoring in the limitations that we have and the constraints. Unfortunately, in these days, most organizations are suffering from disconnected systems and processes. Depending on the different types of work, you may have whole different databases and whole different solutions and whole different work processes that are managing these different things. So they're treated as silos and entities in and of themselves. If we have multiple entry points and very segmented pieces of data, it's very difficult to take a holistic view of what the resource demand, impacts that we have, contention that we might have, and whether or not the piece that we're just looking at that time is at risk of being compromised because of, let's just say, competing demand for the resources and the time and the efforts. One of the things that we're doing with EPM Live and our solutions is really providing an all-work solution in one platform in your SharePoint environment, whether it be hosted or whether it be in your own SharePoint farm. By being able to bring these things together, we can achieve some of the savings and benefits and eliminate some of the hindrances that having these disconnected processes and systems cause for organizations. So the business value proposition really here on that aspect is that there is essentially no real need to have separate and often expensive applications to manage just a segment of your workload and a segment of your work portfolio. We can generate increased value if you're a SharePoint user today or a SharePoint company today. Just getting these things done in SharePoint would help you just get increased value from your existing investment in SharePoint without having to support and buy standalone solutions. It will also help increase efficiency by workers getting all of their work in a single solution. They don't have to be hopping around from different solutions to different solutions depending on the nature and the type of work that they're in at that particular point in time, especially if they're working on a lot of these things simultaneously. Another derived benefit can be if we can get all these things into a common solution, there is an opportunity potentially to retire multiple solutions that are in your different silos that can all be handled in one. So there's a total cost of ownership and a total cost savings that can be achieved by looking at it from more of an all-work perspective. From a project management maturity consideration, there's considerations and tools that we must put in place when there's a PPM process and system to put in place. I mean, we talked earlier on what's in it for me, but one aspect of these things is that it brings about change, and change isn't always easy. And successfully implementing change in an organization can sometimes be a rocky and a difficult road. But one of the things that we can do to help ourselves here is that when we put it in a PPM process and system, and when we implement it, we should consider the maturity and the readiness of the organization to execute and sustainably deploy it. That could be from a skill set, could be from an experience perspective, it just could be from some cultural aspects of different parts of your organization. But you should be able to consider these things and put together a plan and a roadmap that gives you the highest likelihood of success. Because not all organizations are created equally. If you look at this project management maturity model as a concept, in different industries, for example, in IT, Gartner talks about where different organizations sit in the preponderance of their different levels of maturity, and that even within a singular organization, larger organizations, different subsets, departments, or business units within that organization are not created equal and are not sitting at the same level of maturity. So I would say that if we don't factor that into what we expect and what we put in place, and we overreach, we can actually severely impact or maybe even negate the benefits that we're trying to get from our PPM solution. So we have to really put, from a maturity perspective, we really need to factor in the key dimensions. It's not just the solution. It's not just the process. You really have to figure in people, process, and the technology and the tools. By factoring all these things and aligning them with where you really are at. An organization really needs to be honest with itself where it's at and figure out a way how we can take the next step and stretch the organization without breaking the organization. Because at the end of the day, using this project management maturity concept, if we think about the majority of these folks sitting between a level 2 and a level 3 maturity in their organizations. If we set the goal and the PPM expectation in this chart, if we set what we expect this thing to do at, say, a level 4, but where we really sit as an organization is at level 2, the gap between that is really the risk we run and the degree of the risk we run at having failure in our deployment. So the key here is we've got to figure out where we're at. We need to start at an appropriate place, but then build a roadmap for improvement on maturing the organization. We can talk about PPM maturity next week in our in our topic next week in more detail. So hence, EPM Live as an organization, just for your information, we have solutions for different tiers of maturity in the EPM and PPM world. So whether it be from simple collaborative project management to an all-work enterprise project management solution to more sophisticated strategic portfolio management in conjunction with overall work management, we can meet most organizations where they sit today. But because you can upgrade from any one of these to the other very seamlessly, you can start anywhere you are on this continuum from a maturity perspective and not hit the ceiling for a long, long time. You could actually start at the lighter weight level or where you're at if you're not all that mature as an organization, but still know that you have the headroom to actually grow into a very sophisticated PPM solution. A lot of organizations can sell lighter weight things, but they hit their ceilings very quickly as they mature as organizations. And we like to think that we can travel with you through your journey through PPM and EPM maturity. So if you think about project roles and tools that apply to a PPM process, but depending on the role you're taking in that PPM process, the solution should address the varied needs of different audiences and different participation and different constituencies within the organization, because it's certainly not the same for everyone. So if we take some of those roles that we looked at earlier on, from an executive perspective, how do we make good decisions? Well, the request and the demand in the business case process would really necessitate consistent capture and definition of projects and work. But also that consistency should include the data points and the information that's really needed to make informed decisions on which projects should be worked on. So we talked about this in the demand management section, but an executive role would really want this input so they can make decisions based upon their priorities, to work with a steering committee and a governance team to make sure that that portfolio management process is well run and managed, and it's based upon the data sets and the information that's important to your particular organization. Portfolio visibility, as I said earlier on, it's not hard to sell executives on visibility. Anything that can give them more visibility, they're always for. The question is sometimes maybe not have full visibility into what it takes from those roles below them in order to provide that information. Oftentimes, it's not necessarily visible. The churn and the effort and the manual time that can often be better applied in pulling together data. The idea is that if we can do this portfolio visibility capability in a more automated and natural output fashion, the executives will get what they want, but free up the other roles in the PPM process to do more effective work and do things that are more productive than just compiling data. Executives are always interested in financials. So being able to have detailed line item budgets for all of our portfolio items and projects and work elements really will help us manage a budget and a plan, to be able to look at actuals and see how our work efforts are actually tracking according to what we budgeted and what we planned, and really make decisions based upon how well we're tracking and the way we can manage the financials, which the executives are often responsible for in many of the roles. So the idea is we want to provide these tools to that executive role. Also, executives, it goes without saying, dashboards are something that's highly desirable, something that's needed. So by being able to provide resource and financial visibility and all the metrics in both detail and graphical format that executives want to see, how to keep their gauges in their dashboard so they can see at a glance what's important to them in measuring how their portfolio is performing. The idea here is that we can provide these things in our EPM Live tools as a real natural output. All the team members would need to do is keep their data current, and the project managers and the resource managers. And this information will be provided without a lot of manual churn or even any manual churn on the part of those roles that are supporting the executives. Project scoring and prioritization as a natural output of doing good business cases and doing good demand intake. Executives can start looking at things like internal rate of return and return on investment and prioritization scores and strategic alignment applicability in when they're looking at the projects. So the executive role, by being able to get this information from their teams and from their middle management, can make informed decisions and also track how they're doing once we agree to execute on these projects and work initiatives. All the evaluation selection criteria and visibility in forms and formats to make it apparent what are the best investment bets, whether it be how well they strategically align versus the risk or the value of the projects. All the things in the criteria, we want to provide tools that provide consistent valuation but also give visibility to make apparent which are the less desirable versus the more desirable projects for us to be working on. And obviously, what-if modeling in a rapidly changing world and environment. As intake comes in, as new priorities are established, as market conditions may shift the focus in different products we may be wanting to work on to meet demands or meet the competition. The idea is we need to be flexible and be able to analyze different scenarios and trade-offs at any given point in time. And whether the executives do this themselves or have key individuals that support them in this decision making, we need to look at it from all the aspects that are important to us, whether it be financials, whether it be resource constraints, whether it be strategic alignment or risk or other market forces that we may want to consider. The idea is that we need these tools in order to respond to changes in the marketplace and in business conditions. At the end of the day, EPM Live can actually support any of the metrics that are important to your organization. If you're doing things in a disconnected fashion and scoring things in spreadsheets or other things like that, the metrics that you want should all be able to be plotted, visible, and ranked so that you can actually make good decisions and compare projects and ideas against one another and base this on their objective merit instead of subjective forces. All right, in the PPM solutions, project managers really start, their goal is really how can we execute better? How can we best deliver on the projects? So in a PPM solution like EPM Live, the idea here is to have a forum or a place where all the information can be managed for these project managers and get participation from their team members and information from the teams that they're trying to coordinate. So being able to have a singular place, for example, where you can manage tasks and resources and issues and risks and change requests and documents and other discussions and information around the project really helps a project manager stay on top, keep current, and have visibility into their project team. With widely distributed project teams these days, whether they be just domestic or domestic and internationally, it gets more challenging to get current information, to have team members not be making assumptions based on information, and have project managers truly understand where they're at without chasing people down for information or corralling people into meetings where they're not actually working on delivering for the project. So the key is these project workspaces provide very key capabilities that support the project manager being more successful in delivering on time and on budget with proper scope and proper quality. The key schedules, be able to publish plans and schedules, to take that portfolio item in the PPM solution and break it down to more detailed tactical plans that we execute on, and be able to disseminate that via a web browser so that we don't have to pass files around to people, etc., is something that really helps the project manager get a current status of the project plan, but also helps them communicate revisions to their plan to the team members and other interested parties and stakeholders. So online schedules that give one place for one version of the news, not emailing copies of schedules around or printouts that people wonder what's changed or if I'm even looking at the current version of the data. Being able to have a central location to do this stuff helps keep a project manager online or on time, and also keep communicating and in sync with the team members and other stakeholders. We talked about the concept earlier on. All too often we run into today where project managers are spending an inordinate amount of time compiling their reports because of all the manual intervention, calculations, putting it into a common form or format like a PowerPoint is really, at its core, not productive effort. It maybe fulfills the need for reporting and disseminating information up the chain, but it's time that could be better spent on doing something that helps promote the delivery of the project as opposed to just information sharing. By providing automated status reports in the PPM solution, these capabilities really help a project manager on the execution side so that they can fulfill their obligation of reporting status up the chain on how their project is doing and delivering on a number of different fronts to that executive management, where they would get that automated report or in a dashboard format that information without the project managers having to do a lot of manual massaging of that information. Status reports from teams. By having a project manager have an online method to gather that more subjective information. We talked about this a little bit last week on things like what have we accomplished, what obstacles have we overcome, what things should I know about that aren't in a completion status on a particular task. The idea is to get these types of subjective, narrative-based information from my team in a common repository, in a common format that I can easily access and even pull into reports on an automated basis is something that really helps me as a project manager keep my finger on the nuances in the status of my project. And then just the overall automated streamlined process by having automated workflows, which should be a key component of any PPM solution. By having those things and having that process streamlined, meaning I'm getting information to my team, I'm getting information from my team, I'm getting requests, I'm getting changes as being illustrated in this example, and getting an approval on changes into the mix so that the feedback loop between suggesting the change, getting the change approved, and then basically executing on that change becomes a much quicker turnaround. And effectively, those quicker turnarounds compound one another to help us deliver quicker on our projects and with more, let's just say, quality and less rework, because it's all tied together in a closed loop process. From those functional, for those resource managers, this PPM solution really provides benefit by giving visibility into a more global or holistic way the resources that are under my direction, and see what the visibility is into all of the resource demands, and to see whether or not we are deploying them well, whether or not changes have come about that are causing me to be over-allocated, and do all of the different things that we want to do, either whether it be from a high-level capacity perspective or from detailed tactical work assignments that people have gotten. We want visibility to all that through the PPM solution. So from a resource capacity planning perspective, some high-level capacity plans, if I own a department or a set of roles within an organization, it's very helpful for me to be able to see at any given point in time, is the capacity versus demand for that role? Is it going to compromise my ability to succeed? At any given point in time, if I am significantly more committed in resource to what I have on hand or what I can get my hands on via contracting, something will not get delivered. You can only cover so much through additional sweat and overtime. There's a price to be paid for all that. So the idea to be able to manage and get visibility into what the reality is of what we're having to do to deliver effort and skills to projects and other work efforts in the organization is going to help me be more successful in the long run as a functional or resource manager. So from a capacity planning perspective, we can do these on a portfolio item by portfolio item basis, meaning we can look at our resources and get them committed or planned as far as what the expectation is going to be. But then we can look at them overall by aggregating them very easily in a good PPM solution, seeing what the net result is of the aggregate commitments across all those portfolio items or work elements that are being considered. And at the end of the day, you need skill sets, but then you eventually have to tag a name or a person with that work. So the idea here is that you eventually have to decide who's available, who's got the right skill sets, and get them to the right projects at the right time. Tool sets like in EPM Live and its portfolio engine allows you to not only do that, but also do it in a way that actually provides automated negotiation and workflow between project managers and resource managers, where the project manager has a requirement for a type of a resource, which ends up being a request to a resource manager, who then in turn has to figure out who that resource is going to be, and then assigns that or suggests a resource for the project manager for them to accept into their project. The idea is that byplay can happen on a more automated basis. Never precludes the need for conversation, obviously, but the idea, how do we streamline that process so on balance it helps us do this more effectively and more quickly. And then tactically, even if it's we're talking about the capacity plan level at a higher level for a portfolio item where you may be doing FTE-based planning at a very high level. But what happens when you start breaking projects and work down to their component parts, and then you start assigning people to specific tasks and specific work elements within the organization? We also want the ability to see what that work element mix is and what that looks like from a demand perspective to see if what we actually assign tactically, one, aligns with what the capacity plan was, and two is it over or under allocating our people in reality as we execute? And if we look at this, we can also track status of the resources under our purview to see if they're completing tasks as expected, so that we, in answering to the rest of the organization, can see that we're successfully supporting all the work efforts within the organization. Now the team members, we talked about there's got to be something in it for them as well to provide the feedback and the information we want to help sustain and feed this solution. By being able to accommodate all of their work items into a singular solution, they can then manage and track those, so they can have one place to go to see what's been put on their plate. Doesn't matter if it's service requests, project tasks, issues, action items, or to-dos. Not having to chase around different solutions and different places to go to see what my total work mix is, being able to get that all in one place streamlines that whole process for me. And for progress status, if I have that one place to go and I can file completion status or comments about the works that I'm doing on from that singular place, it makes my life more simple, and it streamlines and centralizes that whole process for me. So getting a team member to participate on that basis can actually make their participation in the process and executing less demanding and keep them more heads down on development and delivering their project deliverables. Also, a common thing, a lot of organizations really want to do time reporting against the work efforts. And to capture actuals about what it really is taking you to do things, it's a good practice. Not all organizations are ready to do this, but the idea to have inherently built into the solution that's tied in with everything else that's going on in the PPM process, to be able to record time spent or actual effort expended against different work elements or projects, and be able to provide progress like a percent complete against those items in one location means I just have one place to go to fulfill my obligation as a team member to provide feedback on both of those dimensions to my organization, meaning I don't have to sit in a status meeting and give my progress and go then back to my office and fill out a timesheet. I could actually kill all those birds with one stone and provide status essentially from my work area in the time reporting area of the solution. And that's what EPM Live does provide. And just overall easier participation. This whole concept of automated workflow and business process allows you to submit changes, submit feedback, respond to requests. All the things that you want to do through automated process is really going to divert the team member from their primary mission less and actually allow them to get those things off of their plate very quickly. So these streamlined processes are going to save time and make them more available to do the things that they're really being pressed to do, which is deliver the items that they've been charged with. So just some ideas, obviously not all inclusive, but some of the high points of what's in it for all those different levels. Another key piece is not everybody's doing the same type of work. Not everybody's doing the same processes and methodologies, depending on where they sit in an organization. So the processes and solutions for a PPM solution should be tailored and should be flexible enough to accommodate all of an organization's work types and any of the affiliated processes and methodologies that go along with those work types. So with that being said, a tool should be able to accommodate a variety of needs and not be monolithic or one-dimensional in the way it handles work. So for example, in EPM Live, we have the ability to handle templates or have different types of work with different methodologies, different content, different metrics be accommodated within a singular solution, yet have visibility of the entire portfolio automatically generated through reports or dashboards or portfolios so that we can get ready information on all these different work types at any given point in time. And if you really need to subdivide, and those work processes are really different, we can actually subdivide the PPM solutions so that you have at that red level here, that organization or business unit level, underneath it templates and methods and workflows that are appropriate to them. But yet from an enterprise perspective, still be able to get visibility into what's happening in each of those areas to the executives that have that purview or that need to know. So the idea that flexibility of being able to handle different work types is important, but it's also very, very doable. I know it is in EPM Live, not with all solutions, but it's something that can be accommodated. And we provide a lot of templates out of the box for different methodologies, work processes, and project types. But the idea is that any of these can just serve as a foundation for you to really tailor that to be exactly with the way you do work in different parts of your organization. So those are some of the concepts. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today on a demonstration, but I thought maybe what we could do is kind of explore a little bit the types of things that we're talking about and see them in action. For example, being able to come in at any role, and depending on what the role of the person who's logging into this solution is, their landing page or their home page could be tailored, and usually is tailored to their role and the things that they're actually participating in. So for example, depending on this role, if this person is more of an executive, for example, they may be able to see specifically portfolio items of which they're specifically interested in. At a glance, be able to see what is actually being proposed, what's being worked on and actively managed, and how the status is in different dimensions like schedule and budget and risk, etc. And then also being able to look at metrics and seeing how the budget versus return is tracking on different categories of projects here, using charts and very flexible charting web parts, financial summaries on how our actuals are going against these types of things. But the idea being a role for a team member might be coming in here to just say they might just get a My Work area in here that is actually giving them the work elements that they're responsible for and giving them quick visible access and a great quick place to go and status and provide feedback on what it is that they've done. Okay. Depending on the role, if you are have the permissions to submit and create new portfolio items, the concept of actually creating a request and or a business case for those portfolio items is something that can be made readily available to you so that you can fill out the appropriate forms depending on the type and nature of work that you have. So the business case and the information could be variable depending on the nature of the type of request, or even as you go through the different life cycle stages in the life of a project or life of a request, you may find varied needs where it expands to then provide more and more data that needs to be added, and things like scoring these things on how well they strategically align. Do they provide benefit and cost reduction? Are they going to improve revenue? And actually have all those selections contribute to a prioritized weighted score for your projects. As you go and look at a total overall portfolio, you can then actually, from a PPM solution and an executive perspective, start looking at things more holistically like overall prioritization scores for your portfolio. And as you get the business cases and active projects, you can start looking at how they ranked in each of the categories that were important to you and how that weighted prioritization has come out, so that we can look at those things in a way that we can see which ones have the most merit and which ones we should further consider as they go through their life cycle. We can also look and see how well they align and what business initiatives they align with, and as if ones are more important than others, are we putting enough investment in the areas that are most important to us and looking at how they align with our strategies like growing the business and improving efficiency, transform the business in this case. Also, as you start evaluating the portfolio, this is where executives can get access to, and the folks that support them can start looking at things like capacity plans for any portfolio item. They can start looking at FTE-based or hours-based plans that actually say this is the role that's going to be required, and here we need an FTE or fractional FTEs with these resources at any given point in time across a time phrase, a time horizon. We can also do the same thing with cost planning and detailed budgets. Tied to the portfolio item, a cost or a plan can be justified by line item detail, such that whatever cost categories you budget to, whether they be labor or whether they be other costs like materials and contracts or software and travel, those things can all be factored in on a time phase detailed basis and ultimately arrive at a total cost of the project that is supported. And then also be able to track actual costs in this project against those categories, so we can look at how we're doing and tracking our performance against the plan. At the end of the day, we can also take a look and evaluate portfolio trade-offs by using a what-if modeler, and this would be an executive or an executive support function that would actually be able to look at these things and look at the potential projects in the mix, look at their attributes, look at, say, for example, their return on investment and prioritization scores, whatever makes the most sense, and really determine what the right mix is of these things. For example, I could look at that and compare that with targets and budgets that have been applied and see very readily where we are exceeding budget thresholds or resource capacity thresholds, and then start deselecting and or moving projects around to relieve or be able to do something that's a more doable portfolio by moving that information around in a more what-if scenario type of basis. So those are types of things that support the executives in this type of thing. If we start looking, for example, at individual projects, we can support project managers through individual project workspaces that allow them to get their finger on the pulse for any and all information about their project. We talked about this in some of the earlier segments, but the idea at a glance to be able to go into a workspace for my project, be able to see what my KPIs are for this project, be able to see what's overdue at a glance without having to navigate through the entire schedule, be able to manage my team, be able to look at detailed tasks and schedules and issues and risks and discussion threads, et cetera, et cetera, provides me that one format to work with. And the details that are being managed here can be fed up to the portfolio itself through automated roll-ups so that the executives at that former level we were at can get the information that's at a net level derived from the detail that are being managed at the project level. From a team member's perspective, as they get work assignments, as they get allocated to teams on projects, they're going to want to deliver, but they're going to want to participate and provide the feedback that's expected of them. So, for example, a team member could very easily go to their My Work area, and in that area would be everything that has been put on their plate at whatever type of work or whatever level of detail is appropriate. So here I'm looking at things by when they're due, and notice I've got project tasks, I've got issues, I've got service requests, I've got backlog items, I've got action items in here. The idea is I can see what's on my plate. I can, for a variety of projects and work efforts, I can simply complete these by checking the box. I can put in % completes by activating these things, but from one place I can serve my needs and reporting of progress to any of the number of projects or work efforts that I'm on. I can also go in and do a timesheet in here from one place without having to go to a separate solution. If this is something your organization wants to do, a team member or a user can actually put all of their efforts, and even non-work and absence time in here, and in one place be able to put the hours that have been worked on a particular work item, as well as progress, things like % complete, so they can fill both progress and time reporting all within one user interface. On top of that, one of the key things that people like is they know when their resources are not going to be available. So providing a team member a place where they can easily submit in the context of their project system where they're going to be off for vacation or sick and be able to enter that time so your project managers and your functional managers can plan on that time in the context of this project and work planning solution in this portfolio is something that's very helpful and visible for them. And then just from an overall reporting perspective, the concept of being able to provide automated reports. The different types of reports and dashboards you can get take a lot of form and format. We have the charting web parts you see on the pages that I've shown you already. Just aggregate reports that aggregate data, like for example, if I wanted to look at all the issues across all my projects, being able to go in here and say, let me see all active issues without having to go into each individual project is a powerful way for me to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening across different areas of the projects. I could look at things like project dashboards. So if I'm going to look at, say, the portfolio, and I wanted to look at a specific dashboard on things like financial performance, I can very readily get to that in one place by just rendering the dashboard. So if I go and say, I guess I'll look at the issues dashboard since that's what's in that category. But the idea of being able to look at graphical information supported by more detailed data to support those graphs are dashboards that many are out of the box but are highly configurable by our users. And then just overall SQL reporting services reports that we have out of the box here that you can actually go in and run these reports through a viewer and put them out into common formats. So whether it be a project status report or a strategic alignment report, let's just, since it's portfolio management, let's say, what if we want to look at all the candidate projects by their strategic alignment versus their risk? By actually having this data in a central solution, it's very easy to see strategic alignment versus risk for the candidate projects. And here, in this graph, your highly desirable projects should be in this upper left quadrant. High strategic alignment, low risk. Looks like most of our candidates aren't solidly in there, but the idea is that we can start making relative value judgments on all this and put formats, reports like this out to formats like PDF and Word, etc. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the things that we were talking about in the slides earlier on. Now with that, let's finish up by recapping. We're coming up to the top of the hour. If we look at the value proposition of these solutions overall, because we looked at value propositions that the different roles would be looking for, but overall, a good PPM solution and a scheme for deploying it should give us increased understanding of the contribution to the business of each item that's being considered or being actively worked. It should give us increased visibility and transparency to the entire investment portfolio. It should give us increased quality of the investment portfolio because we'll be working on the right things based upon consistent objective criteria. They'll give us increased opportunity to take corrective action on investments because we'll know when things are falling off the rail quickly and be able to take action while we still have an opportunity to have an effect. Also, we have a decreased likelihood of investment failure because as these things are tracking, we can see whether or not things are going bad in any of the dimensions of the project and make a decision whether to pull the plug or not. A decreased level of business risk because I believe that we're working on the right things and we're tracking these things well. And just increased responsiveness to economic events and trends is a natural output of this because we can constantly reassess our portfolio holistically and see if new things should be put into the mix at the expense of other things. It will also improve business impact of project investments through consistent scrutiny of the projects. and just improve overall organizational effectiveness through improved project visibility and historical insights. And then we should improve productivity just by the mere fact of the removal of manual administrative processes and burdens that might be currently in your system. And then we'll also, from a resource perspective, improve staff utilization through the accurate exposure of staff workloads and making sure that we have the right resources working on the right things at the right time. We should also be able to improve project quality through consistent project management processes and full design consideration, including project dependencies, so that we can actually deliver without the quality that's often sacrificed when we get into fire drills. And overall, we should just increase the predictability of project delivery. By having all this visibility both on the planning and on the execution side, we should have more on-time and on-budget projects. If you want to check out how EPM Live can help you in these areas by automating solutions and often by using tools that you already know and own, come check us out at epmlive.com. You can actually check out all of our different tiers of our solutions: Project Engine, Work Engine, and Portfolio Engine, our highest end solution. And you can either learn more about them online, or you can actually request a free trial and get access to get hands-on with the solution. Please consider joining us and registering for our webinar next Thursday on project management maturity and kind of progressing through that. And also look for an email that'll come that'll give you access to a recorded version of this webinar and the slides that were used to support it. Once again, I thank you for your time today, and please contact us at epmlive.com if we can answer any questions for you specifically, or possibly even do a tailored demonstration or presentation to meet the needs of your organization. Have a great day, and we'll catch you next time.